Alright, so now we're going to go over cleaning the heads, PL500, DDL500, and the DLK400. But before I start that, we're going to go over the cleaning kits. We have the cleaning kit for the DDL500, 2911-0400. We have the cleaning kit for the DLK, 2911-0600. And we have the cleaning kit for the PL500, and that's 2911-0800. All the kits come with a bottle of oil, needles, cleaning brushes, and a couple tools. I also have this kit for specifically for nozzles. It's a nozzle cleaning kit. It's 2911-1100. That basically comes with the handle tool and a couple of these. It comes with 5 of these foam tip brushes, which are used to go on the inside of the nozzle and clean out any glue boogers or anything like that you got going on the inside. That tool comes in really handy. Alright, so to begin with cleaning, we're going to start with the PL500. First thing you always want to do before you disassemble anything is you want to make sure the stroke's backed off. If you're going to use a vise, make sure you're not gripping the coil because you'll damage it. So either grip it down below on the armature housing or up high on the stroke housing. So you put it in the vise, and you can use 16 millimeter on this. So we want to back it all the way off and then bring it back a couple clicks. So counterclockwise all the way up, bring it back a couple clicks. And use our 16 millimeter. We're going to pull the stroke. When we do this, it's going to be a little messy because it's going to have glue in it. So you're going to pull this out. The first thing you're going to do is check, make sure the O-ring looks good. It's not expanded, cracked, or completely broken, missing. You're going to check out, make sure that the stroke adjustment doesn't look bent or damaged. Set that aside for now. You can probably rinse it off and then set it aside. Then we're going to switch to the nozzle side. We're going to pull the nozzle and the armature out. Again, it's going to be a little messy when you do this. It's going to have glue in it. So you're going to pull the nozzle, pull the armature, probably rinse those off real good, and then the next step is you'll want to flush this out. So when you go to rinse this, you can do it in a sink or whatever, run some water through it. You just want to be careful, don't soak the coil too much. You don't want to get this wet, so you don't want to sit there and hold it under water. You can get you like a spray bottle or something, or if you have a jet sprayer on your sink, just kind of spray down through here, through the module assembly, flip it over, just kind of spray both sides. You can take some Q-tips, clean out in there, and you want to run some water down through the intake here and get this channel, make sure it's clear. You want to make sure you see water coming out and then blowing out into this chamber here. If not, it's clogged and you're going to have to unclog it, which will require a little bit further disassembly. You can also take this little intake off, but you only want to do that when necessary because it is Loctited on. So you're going to make sure that pathway is clear. You're going to clean this real good, and then we're going to set that aside, and we're going to make sure that the nozzle is not clogged. You can do that with one of the needles that come in the kit. So basically you'll run it through the hole, and you should see the needle protrude out the end of the nozzle. That way you know it's good and clear. So you can run it through a couple times, knock any pieces of dried glue, come in through the other way, spin a little bit, get it nice and clean. You're good to go on that. And then the last thing we want to do is make sure that we don't have any clogs in the stroke adjustment and the armature. You'll notice that they have holes on the ends. So there's big holes, and then you flip them over and there's 3 little holes. You can see them right there as I spin it. So you want to make sure those aren't clogged. The way you do that is you just flush some water down through them. You should see water spraying out the holes. If either one of these are clogged, then you want to make sure those get unclogged. You can take your needle that comes in your kit, you can run it through the holes, or if you have a small tool, or you can even take your nozzle tool, the foam tip, and run it down in there and knock any dried glue or anything off. You also want, the only exception to that is if you have latex hardware. So if you have latex stroke and armature, they won't have these holes, so you won't have to worry about it. So now that we've got everything nice and clean, we start reassembly, always starting with the nozzle side. Put your armature back in, put your nozzle back on, 16 millimeter, just snug, don't get all crazy tight. Put your stroke back in, make sure nobody played with it, turned it down on you, don't want to damage anything. This is also 16 millimeter. Snug that down. Now you can go ahead and dial it back into your operation range, all the way closed, clockwise, quarter turn, half turn, and right in the middle. That's your sweet spot. Alright, so next we're going to start with the DDL 500. And the first thing you want to do is remove the flap. Set that to the side. Just like before, we're going to start with the stroke adjust. So you always want to bring it to the closed position. So you can unlock the set screw. Once you got the set screw loose, you just crack it a little bit, otherwise it's going to bind on you. And you can start bringing it out. Once you get that out, you're going to have, of course, glue everywhere. You're going to check your O-ring, make sure the O-ring's good, make sure there's no damage to the stroke adjustment. And then we're going to switch to the nozzle side. This is going to be a 7 millimeter socket, works best. Set that to the side. Set that to the side. You're going to want to rinse all that stuff off. It's going to have glue all over it. So then we're going to want to flush this out real good. You're going to go into the glue intake, and it does a 90-degree channel here, so you want to make sure that's clear. Again, you don't want to soak the coil, don't submerge it underwater or anything like that. You just want to get this flushed out really good, both ends, and get this channel flushed out really good. If you have to, you can take off the air nipple and the glue nipple to make it easier to access. If you want to take off this glue nipple, you have to take this air nipple off because it gets in the way. So once you got this all cleared out really good, go ahead and start reassembly. So, well, actually, before we do that, we want to make sure that this ain't clogged. So we're going to take our needle, run it through the inside, make sure that it's nice and clear there. You can come back through the other side, put it through. You can also take your felt tip nozzle cleaning tip, run it in the inside there, grab any dry boogers and get that out of there. Make sure our stroke and our armature pathways are nice and clear. Got these holes on the back here, and you want to make sure those aren't clogged. So once you got everything nice and clean there, you can start putting it back together. Tightening down the nozzle, snugging it down. Put your stroke back in. On the put it in the vise for this part, makes it easier. You tend to stab yourself when you try and do this by hand, so it's easier to have it in the vise. So before you can get your set screw grabbed, you have to bring it down a little bit, almost to close, so you can get it to where you can grab the set screw. Right there. So now I got a good bite on the set screw. I can continue down with the flat tip. I'm going to keep turning until it gets snug. Right there. And we're going to tighten our set screw. Now, if you take the set screw or the tool out of the set screw and you can close it and it moves, the two dots become unaligned, then you didn't tighten it all the way. So bring it back. Unlock the set screw for a second, torque it down a little bit more, and then tighten it back. And then you should be able to check it and make sure that it doesn't move anymore. So your two dots here showing the closed position should still be aligned. So once you're there, you're good. You can bring it back into operational range and you're good to go. The last one is the DLK 400. This is going to be similar to the PL 500. It's got the ratchet. Main difference on this one is the coil. And when you go to put this in the vise, make sure you don't pinch the coil. Just pinch the bottom there. And we're going to back the stroke all the way off. Bring it back a couple clicks. And then we're going to take the ratchet out. Check our O-ring, make sure it's good to go. These stroke adjusts do not have holes in them, so you don't have to worry about this area getting clogged. Gonna make sure there's no physical damage. Gonna have glue in here, so it's gonna be a little messy. And flip it over. Gonna do the nozzle side, and again, you're gonna have to use two tools on this, because if you just go for the nozzle, sometimes you'll try and break it loose and the armature housing will move instead of the nozzle. So you have two tools. You're going to hold the armature housing, and with a 10mm wrench, you're going to break just the nozzle loose. So then we'll have our nozzle, our armature, going to have a bunch of glue. So you want to rinse these off. Make sure those are clean. Then we're going to flush this out. Now, here's your glue intake here. And again, it's going to come over and do a little 90 degree. So you're going to want to flush that out. If you get a nasty clog, you may have to break this loose here. Take this off so you can get down in there. You also have a little set screw here that you can unscrew, and then you'll have direct access that you can stick something in there and clean that pathway out. You only want to do that when you got a nasty clog though, because if you break this loose, you're going to need to Loctite it back, otherwise it's going to leak on you. So once you get this flushed out really good, you can go ahead and start reassembly. But I do want to show you one more thing here that you might need to do. So there's an O-ring down in here that you need to check as well. And to do that, we're going to go ahead and break the armature housing loose. So if you break this loose, you can pull the coil out. And here's your armature housing. Now what you're checking here is you have an O-ring in here. You can see it down in there. It's just right below the surface, right above where the coil sits. And what that does is when this comes in here and tightens down, the edge of the armature housing seats on that O-ring, and it creates a seal. So you'll want to check that O-ring, make sure there's no damage to it, clean it out if it's got any dry glue boogers. And while you have this out, you want to check the edge of your armature housing. Look at it like this, make sure it's nice and round, there's no bends or distortion, deforming. If this is damaged at all, it's going to cause leaks. So we'll go ahead and reassemble everything. Our armature housing, torque it down. When you're doing that, you kind of want to hold the coil with your fingers so it's centered in the housing there. And then start with your armature and nozzle again. Snug those down. Put your stroke back. Make sure it's still backed off. Snug that down. And then reset your operating range. So that's it for that one. That concludes cleaning the glue heads.